Hello, everyone. Welcome to a fire-breathing edition of ARG Presents. I am Amigo Aaron, joined by a man who, much like the dragon, is either 32 or 64. The Brent.
Hey, I'm somewhere right in the middle.
Oh, sure. That's what they all say, pal.
You know, someone came up to my store.
Yeah.
And it was like, we were talking about age of people, and they thought I was 28.
Wow.
I was like, you're a little off, man.
I'm guessing the lady that taught you was like in her hundreds at this point.
Well, I told her, I was like, yeah, I've got 2 kids in college. She's like, what? It's like, I thought you were like 28. I was like,
these days, it wouldn't be surprising either way, would it?
Well, that'd be a little surprising.
There you go. So last week, if you joined us, we spun the wheel. We made the deal, the exciting deal, I thought.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And this week, we'll be taking a look at a British computer of some renown, the Dragon 32/64. Now, Brent, I haven't talked to you before the show. Clearly, you know nothing about the Dragon 32/64.
No, I really didn't. I mean, I knew. Once I started playing it, I realized what it was because all the emulation was like, hey, it's like, do you want to play as the Dragon or as the Coco? I was like, and then you start putting 2 and 2 together.
Absolutely. So we thought we'd take a quick look at the Dragon 32/64, which we'll get into that in a minute in terms of why they call it that. We both come from a TRS-80 Tandy Tandy Color Computer background. So for us, this was just like slipping on an old pair of boots. We were right at home. In fact, I was able to run both this week's games on my Coco. And we'll get into why here in a moment. But so one thing you need to know is that you can, if you have a color computer at home, you're here in the States, or maybe you even have one overseas. Both these games and quite a few of the Dragon games will work on the color computer. So it was nice to I got to play this on the original hardware, which is very exciting, Brent. So let's talk about the Dragon a little bit, Brent.
All right.
This computer was released in August of 1982.
Wow.
So it's way back. Yeah.
Way back.
It
cost a fortune.
It had a Motorola 6809E processor running at 0.89 megahertz, which is kind of neat. You had a 32K and a 64K variety of this, that's sort of the way the Coco was. The early Cocos, well, the earliest Coco, I believe, had 4K, and then eventually you could get to 32 and a 64, and eventually with the Coco 3 you could get up to 128, which was nice. So this computer's got a kind of an interesting past. There was a Swansea, which is, I guess, a place in the UK, toy company named Matoy. I knew you'd love that.
You can't sue us. We're Matoy.
Matoy. And their gimmick was making metal die-cast cars like Hot Wheels.
Oh, okay.
All right. So the senior manager there is a fellow named Tony Clark, and he saw the rise of the British computer as it bubbled up. And, of course, back in those days, you had, this is early on, so this is like, you're talking about the Sinclair ZX81, I mean the real old one, or like the VIC-20,
right?
And so he thought, kids are drawn to this. This could be something that this toy company could get into.
Sure.
And so they got together something and they called, and this gets you excited for it. It's called Project Sam. Project Sam.
Hey, I like the Sam Coupe.
And so what they did was he nosed around to try to see how they could angle their way into the computer business.
Okay.
So what they did was they used a reference design for Motorola. All right, and so the reference design effectively, and this is why the computers are so similar. The reference design for Motorola is effectively how they built the Tandy Color Computer, the Coco, Radio Shack Coco, whatever name you use for it.
Sure.
So, pretty much everything was pretty much identical.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
With a few exceptions, and so what you had there was a computer that's almost 100% the same. Now, here's the funny thing: the Coco actually was on sale in Europe. I didn't even know that. There was the Tandy sold those computers overseas.
How in the world is there not lawsuits about this?
Well, because it's a Motorola design, so it's basically it can be used with the chip. It's like an open design, basically.
Huh. Okay.
I've always heard that the Coco was just built with a lot of computers and old consoles were just built with old off-the-shelf parts. There weren't like custom chips. It's not like the Amiga where they're cranking out all kinds of whole things like custom chips. These are like chips that are like that were off the shelf, you know. And so, the Tandy over there. Now, this might be one reason why I don't know anyone that ever had a Tandy in the UK or Europe, but it was over there they were selling for 500 pounds. They're pretty pricey back, and this is 82, so that's a hefty fee.
Heck
back in the day, and so. These guys saw an angle. Now, there are a few differences between the two machines.
I know one of them.
Okay, well, let's see if it's this one. So, the Dragon, the Coco has a serial connector on the back, and the Dragon has a parallel printer port connector, which probably
a better call.
Well, it depends. I guess it depends on how you're going to hook your modem up. Because I mean, I use the serial port for the modem, and the video output was in PAL 625. Line PAL, and of course the Coco in America had the 525 NTSC standard. Now get this is something I thought was interesting. You know what the original code name for the Project Sam, the computer that generated, you know what the original code name for it was?
I'm going to go with Scorpion.
No, that's a good name though. No, ironically and amazingly, it was the Pippin, which was yeah, that's the same name Apple later used for their console. Their horribly failed console, the Pippin.
We don't talk about that yet.
Also, the original Dragon was going to have 16K of memory at the time. Of course, this is 81.
82.
It's 81 when they were prototyping it. So they decided, Clark, the guy that kicked this off, he eventually rose to be head of the subsidiary, which makes sense as it was his baby. So the subsidiary was called Dragon Data. He realized that shipping this thing with 16K would be instantly obsolete. Yes. And so what he did was he said they needed to use 32K in there. And then all of a sudden, what comes out? Here comes the 16K and 48K ZX Spectrum, right? Which we are know and love and are intimate with. And this thing's gangbusters, and instantly you've got a 48K machine out there, and they're both under 200 pounds.
Wow,
so you've got
that's crazy.
This is why the Spectrum. This is one of the reasons why the Spectrum was so popular and so huge. When you can get a competent computer, I mean, it doesn't look like much. I mean, the keyboard,
it looks like a toy, the keyboard, but it's actually pretty good.
And the keyboard's no good for
you can't do any business on it.
But I mean, for games, it was out of the park, and for at the time for remedial at home use, it'd be fine.
Keeping spreadsheets or something like that, right. Sure.
So they were like, well, we've got to double the 32. We've got to have a 64K model, or we're going to get killed. So that's why they decided to have 2 points. One thing I wrote down here I thought was wacky. This thing on the side, it looks like what it's got. It's a male VGA port. I was like, well, look at that. Well, that's the power port. Yeah, that's got a real wacky.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. That was real strange. I thought that was real odd. So by April of 83, like I said, it's figure released in 82. By April of 83, and I don't have solid numbers on the totals on this, but I can just tell you what I found. According to what I found, by April of 83, they had sold 40,000 Dragon 32s. All right.
That's not horrible.
That's right. And they were actually, believe it or not, they were looking at launching these in the U.S.
Well, that wouldn't have made any sense.
Well, why not? If they can undercut...
if they can make it as cheap as they did over there, I guess.
Yeah. Now, one thing I didn't know, I don't know if there's any sort of cartridge compatibility. I'm guessing that there's not. I didn't read anyone mention it, so I don't know what the scoop is on that.
Well, see, you know what I know is a difference that you haven't mentioned yet, and you might get to, and I might be stealing.
Go ahead, steal it, man.
The keyboard's different.
Yeah. What did you think of the keyboard?
Yeah, keyboard, different layout and everything. For what I was using with, it didn't matter. But I thought that was odd.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't surprise me. So they had predicted big things around Christmas time of 83. and they thought they were looking at punching out 5K a month in terms of units shipped. And again, they were talking about going to the U.S. market. Well, stuff went south. In May of '84, Dragon called in the receivers. That means they were in deep financial trouble, and which is never good. So by this time they had launched the 64, which it did not do well at Christmas of '83. And of course now you've got by '83 you've got some big players honing into view here.
Yeah.
You've got again we've got the 48K Spectrum. You've got the Oric 1, you've got the Acorn Electron, and the Dragon was just in the mix. And of course, up and coming, you had stuff like right around the corner. Here comes the C64. You still had the Vic out there. It was bad time.
Yeah, you had to do if you weren't something that stood out, you knew you were just going to get crushed.
Yeah. Now it still did pretty well. All things considered. You had a pretty good fan base there. That was cool. They liked what they had. And the Coco / Dragon. They're competent machines for their era.
Absolutely, I agree. I loved our Coco.
Yeah. Now the funny thing is, the Dragon. Just to get back to some of the similarities and some of the differences, the Dragon uses analog joysticks, which is what the Coco used. And you could also now, and I don't know if you could do this on the Coco. I never thought, but according to this, you could actually hook up a light pin to these Dragons. That's kind of neat. I don't remember seen anybody that had a light pin on the Coco. So
I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't even have known it though for that age.
Yeah. The Dragon could actually be expanded if you really went crazy. You could actually expand this thing all the way up to 512K, which is that's pretty good.
But why? Nothing's gonna take advantage of that.
Well, maybe if you never know. Listen, I expanded mine, my Coco 3, and what I was told by the community was there's homebrew coming that's going to take support. That's going to support these larger memory usages. But of course, back in '83, I can't imagine anybody using it.
Especially 512, that would have been insane.
So let's talk about something. This is some more similarities with the American Coco. When you use this thing, you've got a beautiful, vibrant green background with a sort of black text over it. Now, much like the Coco, you're going to have no lowercase. No. And so what you end up having...
You don't need it. Well, it's all intense all the time.
Now these the funny thing is you can have lowercase if you want, but what you do is it inverts the text, so it doesn't. It looks horrible, doesn't it?
You don't want that.
Now the Coco 3 actually had lowercase. I will say that was a nice addition.
Bad choice.
And there are some you could load up software that sometimes would support lowercase.
Oh yeah,
like
you can fake it.
I remember like a terminal program and stuff that I used to. The funny thing is that when we had the Coco, and again, this is practically the same machine, I would load up the terminal program and do my school reports on it because it was the only thing I had that would support lowercase and it also could print. So I used to do that all the time. They had a custom disk operating system, and it was supplied by an outfit called Premier Microsystems. And the funny thing is, these are all British establishments. It's kind of nice. This is sort of a homegrown computer, which a lot of theirs were.
Yeah.
But it's weird to have it be so close to the Coco, so we can understand what this stuff is to a certain degree because they had their own Dragon DOS system. They had it came with Microsoft Basic, which
yes.
From what everyone says, it's exactly like Coco's Basic. Now we should get into some of the games that came out for the Dragon. Now, we inadvertently played a bunch of games for the Dragon that we didn't even know were for the Dragon back in the day. I would see games, and I think that's an odd game, but a lot of these I've never seen until I started looking at stuff for this game. So, in fact, I almost picked several of these, but I thought, well, we've already covered them to a certain degree, so I didn't pick them. But just some of the games that came out strictly for the Dragon, and again, your mileage may vary, but I've tried quite a few of these on the Coco, and they work fine. You've got your Manic Miner.
Yep.
You got to have that. And it's in black and white, but it's pretty good, isn't it? You played that at one of the computer club meetings.
Yep.
What'd you think?
It's okay.
Yeah. You've also...
There's better ways.
You've also got Chucky Egg, which is another game we covered that was a lot of fun. You've also got the sequel to Manic Miner, which is Jet Set Willie.
Yeah.
which was now that one I haven't tried yet. Have you tried that
not
one?
Not on the Dragon.
You also got Hunchback, which is another game that was I saw a bunch of different releases. Now here are games that I actually had heard of and never knew they were British. The Cuthbert series. Cuthbert was in a bunch of games, and the one we used to have, which is actually mentioned in the article I was reading, is Cuthbert Goes Walkabout. Do you remember that one?
No, I don't.
Oh yeah, because I didn't know I was like, what the heck's walkabout mean? I don't know what the heck that was. So
you gotta get to the boot.
Yeah. So eventually, of course, this thing fell over and died. They basically ran out of money, and they pretty much it closed up shop, which is what happens to a lot of computers. It is what it is. There were a few subtle differences between the Dragon 32 and the Dragon 64, aside from the memory. The 64 has also includes a serial port, which wasn't on the 32, which we talked about. Yeah, so they just put that one model. Got it. The color's different on them. The 32 is beige and the 64 is gray. It's still a difference, man. Now, here's something I enjoy. The 32 is fully upgradable to the 64.
Oh, sure. Why not?
So unless you want a serial port, you're in good shape. This thing was pretty warmly received overseas when it came out. And it is a shame that it didn't do that well. I mean, it had a short lifespan. But, it was...
Well, I disagree with that.
How do you mean?
I think it had a adequate lifespan. I don't think it was short at all.
It was like probably less than 2 years.
Well, but they still made stuff for it long after it stopped selling.
Well, but I'm saying that the actual company it flopped. And I believe the toy place went out of business as well. So it was double trouble. Hey, when you dip your toe in and Coleco learned this the hard way as well. When you dip your toe in the pool, you better be ready to tango because that's a money sink.
Yep.
And think of how great Coleco was doing with their toy line, and then the Atom just sunk everything. That's
killed the company.
So another toy manufacturer bites the dust. So we took a look. We had a pretty good selection here, and we specifically looked at games that were for the Dragon. So both our games weren't made for the Coco in any way.
Correct.
These are strictly Dragon games. Now, as I mentioned, I loaded both these up on my SD card on the Coco, and they both played perfectly. My game had at the very first menu, I didn't know what was going on. I had to hit some buttons, but eventually the game would start. But they both came up. Brent's game came right up. So if you have a Coco here in the States, you want to fire these up, you can, and you probably should. So let's go ahead and we'll let Brent start the show this week. Brent, what do you have to present to the crew this year?
Since we're over in the UK, we're doing some UK stuff. I went ahead and threw up indoor football.
Okay.
Which, for the Yanks, think indoor soccer, not American football.
And before you get started, I will say, this game has practically nothing talked. I mean, it has hardly anything in terms of, I couldn't find any videos of it. I couldn't find any. I couldn't even find it in compilation videos. And I watched a bunch.
Yeah.
And also, there's very little screen of this anywhere.
You want to know why?
I found one screenshot.
I'm going to tell you why.
Why?
Release date, 1987.
So well after the down.
Yes. Yeah. This was way, way late to market. And the developer, Mark Perry, is very aware. Some things from Mark Perry, because he actually got onto one of the Dragon fan sites and talked about this game a little bit. Some of the things he said was the reason why he did indoor soccer or indoor football instead of what normal people would play is he didn't want to have to deal with throw-ins and corner kicks and all that stuff. So if the ball just bounces off the wall, okay, you're indoor football.
Yeah. It works.
Which works very well. He says this is roughly based, and he says very roughly, off of international soccer for the Commodore 64.
Right.
Which is, I see the similarities. I went and looked, but I think he did his own thing enough. He planned on having a manager where you could just set up the positions of the players and stuff like that, but he ran out of time. He said the thing was already way late going to market, so he scrapped all that. However, it does have one of the best features of any sports game of all time. Lets you play computer versus computer. Gotta have it, and I'm so glad he put that kind of stuff in.
Who'd have thunk it?
And and I think that was part of his going for the manager mode, and then had that part of it done, but didn't get all the positions of players and stuff. Overall, when he was done with the program, he had 6K of memory left. He could have added extra stuff on, which I guess was supposed to be for that football manager part that never came to be.
Now, was this a 32K
yes.
game? Okay, so that's impressive right there. I didn't even realize that. That's impressive.
When he was making this, he was friends with a guy named Dave Gibson.
Wow. You're having trouble with that one, eh?
Well, yeah, it's not a hard name. They went to school together, and the players are modeled after ones from his game from Fire Force. So I guess they kind of collaborated on some stuff, and he took the models for the players, the sprite bases, and put those in indoor football. This was developed on a system called Flex, and one way you can note that, if you hold down the FLEX keys, press them all at the same time, it will actually crash the game. And the reason why is the game is trying to loop back into that program mode that has been, shut off because it's not, it's a standalone program.
Really? I'm
going
to try that.
But if you press the keys, and I did try it in emulation, it did crash the game.
What's it do? Just completely stop?
Just locks it up.
That's crazy. I love it. That's a nice tidbit.
Yeah. Also, some other things, when he was making the game, the crowd sound, he was really proud of it.
Yeah.
Super, and it was a pretty good crowd sound. I mean, considering what he had to work with, the rise and fall, of people getting excited and kind of trailing back off.
There is a slight flaw with the crowd sound.
What's that?
And when not to steal an important point of your game, but when you go into the replay mode, the crowd goes.
Now, okay, I know what you're talking about, and I had that happen when I used Coco emulation.
Yeah. But
when I used Dragon emulation, the replays work properly.
Oh, that's good insight, dude. So, nice. Okay.
Now, and he says when he goes back and listens to it on emulation, it doesn't sound as awesome as he thought it sounded when he originally made the game, but I thought it sounded fine. So maybe mine's emulating better.
Yeah,
I thought
it sounded real good. I mean, it sounds like a proper crowd, of that era.
Yeah,
you'd get that.
And since you kind of brought up the replays, I'll go ahead and mention that anytime you score a goal,
or the computer scores a goal, which is more.
It actually plays a replay of the last 3 or 4 seconds of the shot. So sometimes it's really awesome. Like I had one where I'd set up perfectly and shot it from not halfway across the field, but a decent way across the field, and just bounced over the goalie.
Yeah.
And that replay was awesome to watch. I really enjoyed that part of it.
When that popped up, I'm not gonna lie, I was stunned.
Yeah.
I was like, "Holy cow!"
Yeah, I thought it was a really,
and I was already
really
pretty
nice
stunned.
touch.
Yeah.
The AI in this, it's kind of weird programming. I guess he did the best he could for it. When the AI has the ball, it picks a random number 1 through 4, which is the strength of how you can kick the ball. The longer you hold the button, the more powerful your kick is. So the computer randomly picks a number 1 through 4, and then it randomly picks straight ahead, straight to the left, or straight to the right. And that is where it kicks the ball. Which is fine until you get right down to the line.
Yeah.
When the computer is pressed up against the line of the goal, but is on the wall, not actually in the goal, it just sits there and just randomly pounds against the wall, and it's hard to get the ball back.
I've noticed that. That was the one flaw.
That was the biggest flaw in the game. If the computer
gets the ball in the corner near your goal, you've got to go in there and beat the crap out of that thing to get it out of there. And sometimes the computer will run up on goal, and you're like, well, I'm screwed. And the ball goes, burn. It'll go off in a weird angle, and sometimes you get real lucky. But often he just comes up and murders you.
Yeah. The AI on this is brutal. And the reason why is, of course, when you have the ball, you're slightly slower. So anyone who doesn't have the ball will always catch up to you when you're running. So you have to pass.
Yeah.
And passing is not good in this game. You don't pick the player you're going to pass to and then hit the button. You have to press and hold 1 through 4, and that kicks per the power. And aiming towards a person, you just can't do it. You kind of aim towards their general direction and hope that your player gets to it before the opponents do. Another thing, the bounce value, the ball, it also has a value 1 to 4 on how it will bounce that is randomly generated. It is interesting to play this game. I found, one other feature that I have to mention. You get to choose how many men are on the field.
Yeah, I couldn't. There were a lot of options there.
Yeah, and you can have up to 11. Don't play that way.
I played that way the first time, and because I wanted to see that many guys moving around.
Right,
and it worked.
It did, but you can't. The game ceases functionality at that point.
Why do you say that? I played a full game like that
because you can't do anything.
There's a lot of action.
Instantly takes the ball
If you've ever played any of the Amiga soccer games, I mean, that happens a lot on those too. It's a lot of players out there, you know.
Yeah. So I recommend going down to its lowest total, which I believe is 7. That game makes the game, at least versus the computer, far more playable. But the computer is just ruthless. It always will catch up to you, and you can always catch up with that. That's not the problem. It is really good at stealing the ball.
Yeah, it is. And then keeping it, too.
And once it has it, it randomly kicks the ball. So it's hard to try to predict where he's even going to do it. But overall, I played this for a long time. Half dozen games at least at varying time limits with varying people on the field. Plus, I watched the computer on computer play.
I know you love that.
I dug it. I dug this game from beginning to end. The biggest problem with it, of course, from a marketing perspective, is 1987, when your computer went out of production in 1984, is way past the prime. And Mark knew that. Mark reported that he made... How much do you think he made on this game, Aaron?
I can't imagine more than a couple $100.
200 pounds.
Oh, I was pretty close.
200 pounds is what he did. It took him 2 years to make it, and he made 200 pounds. So
that just goes to tell you, timing is everything.
Yeah.
Right? Because this game would have been a blowaway title in, say, 84.
I think so. I think the graphics are great. I would have liked some jaunty tunes.
Yeah.
Even just menu tunes would have been nice. It has no music whatsoever. It does have sound effects of kicking and bouncing off the walls, and of course the crowd effects.
Yeah.
All that is decent to good. The gameplay is great. I think this would be a great game to play 2-player, more so than 1-player, because like I said, the AI is just ruthless. What did you think about it, Aaron?
Well, of course, we've had a Coco for years, and again,
Absolutely.
especially with Coco. So I'd never heard of this game, and but I was pleasantly surprised that it was on my SD card, so I loaded it up. And I got to tell you, when the opening screen comes up, the opening screen is pretty nice, and
it's okay.
And I saw the thing hit C for the options. The first thing I did was go to the option screen because I want to make sure I could pull the joystick, and you can. And I thought, okay, wow, here are options for how many players. Here are options for the length of the periods or the halves, which is great. I love that.
Yep.
Here are options for turn the border on and off, which is great.
Yeah.
No, it does. I mean, I always turned it off because I thought it looked cool. I mean, because the border, with the border off, the whole screen looks just like it should. The pitch is green. Now we are used to the colors on the Coco, so I didn't have any trouble with that. And so, and the fact that I did know you could have 2 players, you could computer. I was like, man, this is a good option screen. Let's see how the game looks. The game comes up, and I couldn't freaking believe it.
Yeah, the graphics.
This is
really
a proper
good.
game, y'all. This is not a dud of a game. I couldn't believe how good it was.
Yeah.
Now, it's not perfect.
No.
The computer is a death machine, and as far as I can tell, there's no way to set the difficulty of the computer.
Not that I could find either.
He comes out, he gets the ball, and he's a bully. He takes it down the pitch and is very difficult to stop. and I had all kinds of trouble even having to draw. Every once in a blue moon, I could kick one in. It was usually a long distance goal. I didn't usually get close enough to where I could get anything. I mean, his goalie's a stud. The way it works is you can switch the player closest to the ball, and once you do that, I mean, your button does everything. You can, I guess, I read that you could go and tackle, and you could do. But I mean, I just got usually I would just be on top of the guy, just hitting the button, trying to
get the ball
out of there. But the indoor aspect of it works great.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that was a good choice.
It was the perfect choice. But if this had came out in the heyday, and for a 32, it's not knowing that is even more impressive. I couldn't believe this. We would have played the crap out of this.
Yeah.
Back in the day. I mean, this is one of the most graphically pleasing, and overall, I mean, you've got 11 guys on the pitch. That's amazing to me. And then the computer scored a goal. I mean, here comes the crowd noise. I was like, oh, crowd noise. That's cool. And then here comes the replay. That blew me. I mean, that was unprecedented. You've never seen that.
Yeah.
I've never, ever seen that on the Coco.
You wouldn't fathom that would even be an option.
Absolutely not. I was wholeheartedly impressed with this. Where has this thing been since 1987? I believe that's right around the time we got rid of our Coco. Was right in that time period because we sold it. It could have been much earlier.
I'll say
and of course,
then.
Getting games from the UK was not an option at that point.
Absolutely
although someone was doing it, because like I said, we had some. But I give this high praise. I'd like to play a couple people. I mean, I know you can play computer. You can play 1 versus 2 player on it too, right? I mean, it said right and left joysticks.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you can.
Yeah, 2 players.
2 players is the way to go.
Because I even tried, because the AI was kicking my butt so much. I tried playing a 2-player game because I thought, well, the AI for the second player, I'm sure you're going to have the one guy that doesn't do anything, because it's going to be player controlled. But I thought the AI might be a little toned down.
Yeah.
It is. In fact, it's turned completely off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when you're playing 2-player, buddy, you got to do it all. Because the AI for the other people are literally, they just stand there or run around in circles.
Yeah.
I was scoring left and right. I was walking the ball into the goal. It was awesome.
I'll tell you something.
Cheating worked.
The fact that you could switch players like that, I mean, it had a lot of the stuff that you would expect in a sort of a modern
game
of that era. Modern.
Yes.
I was as impressed as I've ever been. And I'm not just blowing smoke. This came out of nowhere. Where's this game been all my life? It's definitely going to be one I bring up. And I will say I've got a Coco with the adapters that let me use my Wiko Atari type joysticks on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it played flawlessly. I didn't have any trouble using those sticks. In fact, very rarely do I run into a game where I can't use them. I've got some analog Coco sticks too, but I usually use the Atari sticks. And one thing about and I can't speak on the Dragon sticks, but the ones for the Coco their basic models are kind of junky.
Yeah, they're great.
And mine are really old too.
I even played this with an emulated mouse for a little while, and it actually worked pretty well.
Why did you do that?
It's a long story. I don't want to get into.
Holy smokes! We had a submitted a review from our good buddy Graham W. Vepke. He says or remarks, "This game reminds me of international football in the C64." There you go.
There's a good reason for that.
But I'm not sure I like this as much. The flashing character you control and the overall colors just burn out my eyeballs. It's an acquired taste, Graham. Now, that aside, you can choose the game length and number of players, which you couldn't do in international football. Your controls and tackling is very similar, too, but there are no fouls or free kicks, not even throw-ins, as it bounces off the edges, because obviously you're indoors. Playing against the computer is almost impossible to even draw the game, and the only tactic that seemed to work was attempting long downfield kicks. That's exactly what I did, over defenders and trying to get past the keeper. This got boring fast, 5 out of 10. Now, I can understand everything Graham says.
Yep.
He's not wrong.
You're right.
But if you come from a background for this particular computer, there is a level of complexity to this that is missing in almost every game for the Coco. And just if you want to call this a tech demo, you've got something incredible here. In terms of the screen colors, this is standard fare for the color computer.
Yeah.
For something called the color computer or the Dragon 32 with all the rainbow colors, this was not the most colorful machine. It was given for the obvious limitations of the time.
Sure.
I mean, if you consider this thing was designed in 81 and came out in 82. But something else I was impressed with, and I'm no soccer maven or anything, but your team stayed in their defensive positions. You would have the guys in front of the box. You'd have the second line defense there. I mean, they did their job. They just did it poorly. Like, they were there, but they didn't really help that much. You know, you were, like you said, even when you're playing a computer, you're sort of on your own.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you didn't find any reviews for this because
there are a few modern reviews, all of them with high praise.
Yeah.
Here's what's heartbreaking about this.
Yeah.
Now, I couldn't find any physical copies to buy.
Yeah.
But I found where they had been sold in the past. And this is selling for $2.50.
I'll roll the tape.
I think that's a crime.
Well, I mean,
and some collectors even commented that the reason why this game is not sought after is it's got an ugly cassette jacket, and where the game was released so late into the life cycle, not a lot of people played it. I think that's unfortunate. Mark Perry, if you ever see this, I think you did a darn good job, buddy.
I concur. And I will say, I think there's a very, very limited market for people that collect old cassettes.
Yeah.
Having done R. Sinclair for a while now and looking up prices on it, even the best games I've ever seen go for practically nothing because the cassette is even more the ability for that thing to not crumble to dust is even less than a disc.
Well,
I mean,
and that's why the jacket cassette. That's why so many people mention the cassette jacket's not very good. Is because you're really collecting the cassette jacket, not the game itself.
Yeah. So I think that was a very good. Before we move on, how the heck did you come up with this one?
I wanted to do something kind of UK-ish, kind of get that soccer vibe.
Yeah.
So I know that's a lot bigger over there than it is over here. So I thought, you know what, that's what I'm gonna go with.
Well, I've got it. Normally I badmouth your hideous picks and choices because they're almost always garbage. But in this case, color me impressed. I couldn't freaking believe it. So I guess I'm up now, and so
it is.
I looked around to try to find something to play. And I'm like you. I wanted to find something that I knew was going to be something that was from the UK, and so I wanted to make sure I got something that was exclusive for the Dragon. And I looked around, and I came up with a game called Backtrack. All right, Backtrack was a game developed by a fellow named C.M. Andrew. From Incentive Software, and this was released in '84, so this came out a full 3 years before yours did. This will work on the Dragon 32 or 64, and is a one-player sort of arcade game. Now, before we get into the game itself, I want to talk a little bit about Incentive Software and CM Andrews because the story is I'm guessing a lot of companies came and went like this. So, Incentive was a British video game developer founded by Ian Andrew in 1983, and Ian's brother Chris, CM Andrew, he went by CM, eventually he changed it to Chris. He's the fellow that did this particular game, and he's got a pretty decent pedigree, which we'll move along to in a little bit. These guys, as of the writing of this article that I read, are still around, but they are a company called. Well, they changed their name to Dimension International and went into the VR and next generation VR games.
Man, go them!
And now apparently they've changed their name again to Superscape. So I don't know if you'd heard of them.
I have not, but that's awesome.
Yeah, so
it's awesome to see a company grow like that.
Yeah, well, you'll understand why that they went around for a while. So Ian Anderson, like I said, is the founder. He was one of the first guys around that picked up a ZX81. Again, a ZX. I'm gonna get hassled for that. And the ZX81 was the computer that came out before the Spectrum did. It was and so it was a little bit more primitive. It's funny, I almost bought one of those thinking it was a ZX Spectrum before I knew what was going on. So anyway, he released a game for this thing called Quicksilver, right? It was Quicksilver. It was a game called Mind Out. Quicksilver was the place that he published it through, and so he put this game out, and he made pretty good money, and so. He thought to himself, "Hey, I'm doing pretty good here," and so they started a company with some of his buddies. All right, so these guys ended up doing a lot of 8-bit titles. Now, listen to some of these titles, Brent. I think you may have heard of a few of these. Now, they did a game. The big games they did were for the Coco and for the company computers. And what this guy noticed was that. No, people were making a lot of clones.
Sure.
We've noticed that, haven't we?
Absolutely.
And he was like, why I wonder if anyone actually is trying to actually do anything with the original games. Okay, so what he did, to get this, he caught up, he liked a game called Moon Cresta, which we've played Moon Cresta. Mm-hmm. It's a neat arcade game where you have like multiple ships. They come up. I always like that one myself. It's from a company called Nichibitsu. Okay, so he called them up, and he said and this is a quote. They seemed quite surprised because they'd never been approached by anyone from the home computer industry before, so had assumed there wasn't any money in it. And so he said, "Listen, we can work out a deal here for the rights of this, so I can make some games off of it." And so they told him, they said, "Listen, we'll make a deal with you. But to make it worth the paperwork, we're gonna have to charge you at least £1,000."
Ooh.
Well, no, that's nothing. If you think about it, £1,000 for the rights of this game, and so they were like, "Okay, bam, here's £1,000." So all of a sudden, they've got the rights to be the official distributor to Moon Cresta. Okay.
Okay. I mean, that game was big, but
away they went.
Okay.
But you got to understand, this was let me ask you this:
no one did this at the time.
How many officially licensed arcade games are there on the Coco?
Yeah,
Can you name any?
No, I understand. I understand.
Moon Cresta got released, and it became a top seller, right? And they were smart. They released it on the Amstrad, the BBC Micro, the C64, the Spectrum, and the Dragon 32. So there's a Dragon 32 version of Moon Cresta that we haven't tried yet. It's on my short list. And so again, they moved on, and I told you how they matured. Now eventually, these guys were sort of the author of this game in particular, Andrew, was involved in making a lot of the Lego games. That's how they moved up. They did the Lego. He
big money.
Created Harry Potter. He did a bunch of the Lego, like getting just the engine, up and running. Mm-hmm. They ended up doing a few more other games: Dark Side, Total Eclipse, Space Station Oblivion. I've never heard of that one. I've heard of Dark Side. And the games they were known for on the 8-bits were Backtrack and Mind Out. And again, we're going to be looking at Backtrack. I didn't get to try Mind Out, but it's on my short list as well. So, what is Backtrack? It's a simple game. You play a fellow named Eddie. He's basically a big nerd head on some feet.
Yeah.
And he's captured by a crazy professor. This is straight from Jacket of the cassette. And the professor wants to probe the innermost depths of the human psyche. And so how would you do that, Brent? Would you brain surgery, crazy drugs, some kind of weird computer interface to the guy's head? No. He releases Eddie into a crazy maze filled with and wrought with danger. And says, "Good luck, jerk." And so the beginning of this game, you're Eddie standing there, and he basically gets shoved into this door.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, this is one of the few Amigos I've ever seen, or Coco / Dragon games I've seen with like an animated intro. And it's got an animated intro, and it's got, when you complete the maze, it's got an animated thing that happens there. So there are 2 bits of animation.
Cutscenes.
You never see that, do you? So.
No.
This game, I had heard about this game just from looking around, and then I'm like, well, I got to give this a shot. My mind was blown again when I played this game. I played this one after I played yours, so I was already like, man, I'm in deep trouble this week. This game has graphics like that I have never seen on a Dragon / Coco, and never thought were possible. These blew my mind. So this is a top-down view of Eddie as he goes, and you navigate Eddie with the arrow keys through the maze. Now, I could not get any joystick to work on this.
No, I keyboard only.
And keyboard's fine. It's up, down, left, right. That's all you need.
And a map button.
And you get penalized when you use that. So your job is to navigate this maze and collect the keys. You have to collect the keys to get out in order. There's a key 1, 2, 3, 4. And then once you collect all the keys, you have to navigate your way to the door, and then you'll get out for a minute. Then you get kicked back in eventually. But so it doesn't sound that hard. Well, you're in a top-down view, and as you walk through this maze, you literally see the top-down. It's in 3D.
It is.
That's all I can say.
You view a top-down 3D maze, and when you go through the doorways properly animate and scale. as you go from room to room. It's really, really, really impressive.
It is incredible. And as you go through these, eventually you're going to get to the sides of the building, and you'll see a window, and you can even see little flowers in the grass outside of the window as you come to it. I could not believe it. As you go from room to room, there's a transition of like going from, like, if you're looking down, you see the top of the ceiling as it goes by, and it's amazing.
It is.
This
it's
game,
really good.
it really, in some ways, this game's sort of a one-trick pony. It's got incredible graphics that blow your mind, and I never got tired of looking at them. And it scrolls very smoothly. So
think of like a vector graphics.
Yeah, it's very nice. So as you go through this thing, most of the rooms are empty, and they'll either have doors out or no way out. Except for the way you came in, there'll be a dead end. And usually the dead end rooms have like a window in them because you're at the edge of the building. So picture like a massive maze that you go through to collect these keys.
Not massive.
It's pretty big.
It's a large maze.
It's pretty big. I mean, when I say massive, it's dragon massive.
It's like
about
32 rooms.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought.
In a grid.
Now, as you go through this, you can do two things really. You can map, or you can do three things. I did all three. You can map this, and it works. You map it out. You can hit the map button, but you
have to find the map.
Yeah, you have to find it. You hit the button, and when you do that, you get penalized. Or you could just hunker down and try to figure it out without doing none of that stuff, and just try to do it yourself. I usually did that, but it was not easy. So as you go through the maze, you may come across key 2 or key 4. You can't pick those up. You have to get key 1, then key 2, then key 3. So what you have to do is sort of make a mental note when you find one of these. Now, occasionally the rooms won't be empty. Sometimes you'll come across a skeleton that's in there. He doesn't do anything to you, but he's a good marker to try to explain where, and also this is one of the previous test experiments that's explained that you'll find. Now, the evil professor wouldn't be evil enough if he just stuck in this maze, because eventually there'd be no risk. So what he's done is sprinkled throughout the rooms are snakes. So these green snakes. And now, if you roll into a room and there's a snake there, and you instantly just back out, no problem, because the snakes are sleeping. But if you come rumbling in there, and often you will, because you're going so fast through the maze, you're not paying much attention, that snake, there's no second chance, there's no health bar. That snake eats you, and it actually shows the snake eating you right in front of your eyes.
3 or 4 frames of animation, but it's pretty good.
He eats you, and he's a big fat happy snake after he's eaten you, and that's the end of the game. Game over. Eddie got eat.
Now you know how to. Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You know how to get past the snakes, though, right?
I just didn't go in the rooms they were in.
The snakes have 2 frames of animation.
Yeah.
1 frame is them looking in the corner, and 1 frame is them looking out into the room. It's pretty subtle, but
I didn't even notice that.
Animation. If he's looking in the corner, you can walk right past him. If he's looking into the room and you walk past him, he eats you.
Good tip. Now, does he change while you're in the room?
You can just hit up and down, going in between the 2 rooms until he faces the other way and then go.
Oh, man, what a tip. I didn't even know about that. That would explain why I had some problems later on. I didn't even notice that. So, once you navigate through the maze, you get the keys. Then you have to find the door out. Mm-hmm. It's like a red door. And you click on the door, and Eddie gets out.
You don't click on the door.
You click on it. You run in the door. And he goes out. And then once you're out for what, about 5 seconds?
Yeah,
and then
Professor kicks you
boots you back into maze number 2. Now, I don't know. I couldn't tell any difficulty increase.
There was.
What did you find that was different? I got like the 3rd maze, I think, before I got killed.
On the 2nd maze, when you go past the windows, there is a chance of a frog looking in. If you stay in the room with a frog looking in for too long, the frog will jump through the window and smush you and kill you.
I did see that guy, but I didn't know he actually did anything.
Yeah, you have to stand there for a long time. He's a lot easier to avoid than the snakes because you just have to not be in the room.
That's good tip.
The other way of dying in the game is you have a willpower meter, and every time you pick up a key, or occasionally there's fruit scattered through the maze. When you pick up fruit,
cherries and stuff,
banana, it will refill your willpower meter to give you the will to go on.
I need that.
And it slowly goes. You slowly lose meter as you walk through the maze.
No matter what, yeah, it goes down.
Plus, the scoring is all time based.
Yeah,
it's how quickly can you accomplish your task, and it has a leaderboard and everything.
You'd think a game like that would be. I mean, it seems like everything is there to make this a game that you'd be fun to play and compete against each other at. You know, I mean, time based, and I think that's I think it's kind of neat to compete for the best time in a maze, and plus again the map to penalize you, so you don't want to use it. I like that. I like that aspect of it. The willpower thing really. That at least the first couple levels I tried, it never came into play that much, you know. So I'm assuming at some point it gets a little bit more difficult. And like I said, every time you get a key, it jumps back almost full.
You don't get it full. It is a set amount, but typically speaking, the loss of willpower, unless you continuously look at objects. If you go into a room, like there's a skeleton on your left, if you hit left, you'll look at the skeleton and lose willpower.
Yeah.
Same thing with the windows looking out. If you go into a room that has a window looking out and then you look out the window, you actually lose willpower.
That's crazy. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
How much did you lose?
It's not a significant amount, but it's a visible drop.
It's funny. When I played this game, I guess I was single-minded because I just had my fingers on the keyboard and was just like, okay. I mean, the second I saw a room, I couldn't go in. I just left. I didn't linger around. If I saw a skeleton, I just went past them. I didn't linger around. And I never went into the snake, so I missed all that stuff. I didn't even notice it. I've played a lot of Coco games, and I've got to say this is easily graphically the best one I've played. Although I will say the game Brent picked this week is in contention. It's also incredible graphically. So having played this, obviously you played the heck out of it. What did you think?
Hated it.
Really?
Hate this game.
Why?
Let me tell you something. That willpower meter, it was draining on me a lot faster than it was draining on the
I
screen.
didn't have any trouble at all.
When you name a game Backtrack, and that is exactly what you have to do. This is one step away. All they had to do is to give me an escort to throw in there to pick up and try to get past that snake, and it would have been the perfect game for me to hate. I hate backtracking in games. With no purpose. And this is no purpose, because you find key 2 and you haven't found key 1, and the game won't let you pick it up. And the game moves at an okay clip. It's not speedy.
It's pretty brisk. It's not that bad.
So you find key 1, and key 2 might be all the way in the opposite corner, and you're walking from room to room. You know where you need to go, and all you're doing is traveling for minutes.
It's not that long. It's not that long.
It 100% is. The fastest I ever completed a maze was 6 minutes and 44 seconds.
Right, but it's not like it takes minutes to navigate all the way across to get key 2. It may take it take a minute. I'll grant you that, but not minutes. You can get across the whole thing in less than a minute if you know how to get there.
The game has almost no danger in it. The snakes are probably the biggest danger, and once you realize how to get past them, they're no danger. They just delay you in getting to your next goal. I got to maze 2. I collected, because you have to collect more keys in maze 2. You have to collect 5.
Yeah.
I think I collected the key 3, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm so bored.
I think if you got into this as a time challenge with your buddies, you could have a lot of fun.
Graphically, incredible. Yeah. It looks stunning. It does not look like a dragon game. It looks like, easily a Commodore 64 game or better.
Yeah. It does have the same kind of coloring you would expect. But,
yes. The top-down view works really well, with the exception of you kind of look like Thing from the Addams Family.
Yeah, he looks like he's a little goofball. He reminds me of one of the really Rottens from the old show. The guy just had the bowl haircut.
Because all you can see is the toothless shoes coming out from above his head. This just isn't the game. This isn't my type of game. I'm not a huge maze game fan. In fact, the maze game of this era that I liked the most was Megabugs. Now we gotcha, and that was a huge,
whole different game,
huge maze. Yeah, but it was a huge. That
was more like a Pac-Man though than it was.
Correct. And this maze is smaller, but there was not enough conflict. It was more about exploration to find the keys and then go back and pick up the keys that you had found that you couldn't pick up previously. Just not my type of game. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying it's not my type of game.
I think there's a fun to be had here, but it's a game that you're going to need to get together with your buddies and play and compete for time. I think that would be fun. I think there's graphically it's ahead of the curve by a long distance. But yes, I mean, is it something you're going to play every day? No. But I think there's a game here, a competitive game to play with your friends, and I really enjoyed it personally. Now,
that's cool.
We got a note here from our buddy Graham on this one. Graham writes, "You control a weird bowl cut head with feet character who appears to be stuck in an endless lab experiment. You navigate the maze and need to get out by finding all the keys in sequence order, and sometimes you need to backtrack to go back to them in the order, hence the name. You can only access an overhead map when you find it inside the maze, and some rooms have enemies and dangers which you need to avoid or cross through only when it's safe to do so. The game reminds me of Attic Attack with its top-down view, but this is an interesting game which I think was one of the better Dragon 32 titles, a 7 out of 10. So Graham sort of liked it. I did find this on eBay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did, and it's going. You can get the cassette and in the case for $8. $8. Yeah. So if you are looking to grab it, you can. I thought both games were graphically impressive, and I'll be the first to admit I think your game is incredible. In terms of the amount of characters on the screen and the amount of legitimate action that you get from it. Mm-hmm. But I think my game has its merits as well.
I think yours is definitely more visually appealing.
Yeah.
I just think mine was more fun to play.
I agree.
Even with its flaws.
You know something else that's visually appealing even with its flaws? It's the wheel.
I thought you were talking about me.
No. You are not visually appealing, and you do have many flaws.
What did we add to the wheel?
This week, Brent, we have put the MSX computer on here.
Now, do you think that's going to come up?
You never know, man. You never know.
You know, I think it's time for a little Atari.
What's on there?
Atari. Something.
Fair enough.
Uh-oh.
And what do we have here, Brent?
Uh-oh.
Here comes the hammer.
Mega Drive.
Oh, wow. Mega Drive. So, that's interesting. So, we'll be playing. We're going from the ridiculous to sublime. So we're going to another British-based show next week, which will be on the Mega Drive. Now, we have previously did a show on the Sega Genesis.
Yep.
We thought it was only fair to give our friends across the pond equal time. And so next week, we're going to be tackling games that were exclusively, this is the key, exclusively released in Europe or UK.
Right? On the Mega Drive.
On the Mega Drive, that's correct.
Okay.
And so we'll have to do a little research to figure out which ones. But
I think it's a good episode. I think it'll be fun.
That should be fun. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Hey, we would like to thank everyone for checking us out. That we've had a good month. We've had a lot of people chiming in. We'd love it if you would send your queries, questions, or comments to if you have any, or email us any questions to the address on the screen. Brent, we are going chat free again today, but we're hoping to get that ironed out eventually. We are having some technical difficulties that are giving us some issues with streaming. But we got to thank anyone who showed up for our earlier chat.
I know that Necronom, Pixels at Dawn.
I think Picard probably was in there. We just had a rough go of it this morning.
Free lunch came in. It was. We'll get it worked out, guys, and hopefully we'll be able to stream live and be entertaining twice a week instead of just once.
Yes, sir. So we'd appreciate it if you join us next week for some Mega Drive action. And until then, drag on.